Now let's look at some practical examples of working with arrays. Let's take a look first at some examples that we might be familiar with from a non-computer technical standpoint. One example of an array could be a dynasty of kings. In this case I've chosen King Richard. Now this array here in Perl represents all the kings called Richard. You'll notice that we use an @ sign at the beginning of an array, where we use a $sign for a scalar variable. However, this @ sign is what we use when we're referring to the whole array, that is, all of the kings called Richard. When we want to refer to one king within the array, then we're referring to one of the array elements, and that's most likely a scalar. So what we do is we use the $sign again to show that we're referring to a scalar value, then we give the array name, and then we use a pair of square brackets at the end, and then the element number, in this case number 2, and it looks rather like King Richard II. Now this is actually a little confusing at this point when you're not used to it, because this is not really King Richard II, but King Richard III. Now this may seem very counterintuitive. Why do we have a Richard followed by a 0 here at the top? Surely it should start with 1. Well, considering the fact that computers work on a binary system of zeros and ones, the 0 is very important to the computer and is actually the first number that it thinks of as the first number in a sequence. So the first element here is 0. The second element here is 1. And the third element, or King Richard III, is actually marked slightly confusingly as Richard followed by the number 2 in square brackets. This may take a little bit of getting used to, but there are actually some other instances of this 0 indexing, we call it, outside of a technical framework. For instance, when we refer to the 1st century, the 1st century didn't start with the year 100. The 1st century actually started with the year 1. If they'd known about zeros when they started counting the years Anno Domini, they probably would have started that from year 0 as well. But the difference is between a normal system of numbering, where we expect things to start with 1 and then move on, is that we have the 1st century here starting at 1, then the 2nd century actually only starts with 100. By the time we get down to the year 2000, we're calling that the 21st century. I remember that always confusing me as a child, but it's helped me to get to grips more quickly with the idea of 0 indexing in arrays, and I hope it does the same for you as well.